Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother Asarimhotep with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. And today we are doing part 2 to our lecture series, I should say, titled Toward a Vocalization of Setep, meaning to choose and to select in ancient Egyptian. This is part 2 of our discussion. Towards the end of our first discussion, there was some technical difficulties with the internet connection, and so we decided to kind of wrap it up there and just finish the rest in the part 2. So this is part 2, a continuation of the first video, which will have the link in the description below, as well as a link for the accompanying document for this discussion at the link below. So all that and more will return in just a moment. And we are back. And again, we are discussing the ancient Egyptian word setep, meaning to choose, and its potential vocalization. And so, just a recap from the first video, I am a part of a group on Facebook that is concerned with the discovery of the vocalization, meaning the vowels of the ancient Egyptian language in all of its stages. And our good brother Jean-Claude Mboli has written a book which starts that process. So we're evaluating the techniques that he presents in that text called the Bantu Epic. It came out in 2024. And so in the group, our good brother Ujamaa post a set of images of the various ways that the verb setep is conjugated and presented in the ancient Egyptian language. And he posted it as a way to start the process of kind of honing down on the vocalization process, for which we can take the techniques learned from establishing the vocalization of setep to bring to other words in the ancient Egyptian language. Well, there was an individual who posted a potential cognate for the word setep in his native language. And I too presented a potential cognate for the word setep using the Chiluba Bantu language, which y'all know is one of my favorite languages to compare with the ancient Egyptian language. And this kind of started a controversy with Jean-Claude Mboli, because I break up the word setep into two main components. That is the S prefix and tep being the root. And, he was confused as why I do this, and he believes that it is arbitrary. And so my response to him is that it's not arbitrary. It is based upon years of evaluating ancient Egyptian words and looking for dialect variations in terms of spelling, in terms of expansion and meaning, looking for sound changes and the like. And then, of course, the comparative forms in other African languages, which I've been able to use up to this point. So, again, all the details of the first part of the process is in the first video, so I'm not going to rehash that. But what I will do is continue on in this video with the second part that actually now is dealing with the CETEP part. So I am going to share my screen real quick, and let me hide that and let me make this full screen for everybody to see. And I'm still wondering why it isn't full screen, and I'll have to investigate that at a different time. But for right now, you should be seeing the PDF document that is linked in the description that accompanies this conversation. And for those of you who have downloaded the text from the first video, I would encourage you to re-download the document because I made some changes between the first video and this one. So make sure that you get it. And so I'll be just kind of breezing through many of the points here. You will be able to um, view the details on your own at your own convenience and at your own speed. So there should be a way for me to make this full screen. So boom, that's what I'm going to do. And let me just make that a little bigger. There we go. And so this is indeed uh, the text here. So I guess I could flip through this just like a presentation. So the first part of the text, the first page, is kind of detailing what I detailed just a minute ago. It's going to give you the links to the video. So once this video is done, I'm going to come back and insert that link there, and then re-upload it. By the time y'all get it, this will be a complete document. I include some common sound changes or grapheme changes as far as the script is concerned in Egyptian, which we call Chikam, as well as sound interchanges in the Sumerian dialects with evidence here on the second page. So this is going to become important when you are evaluating the topic here. And so I also include some important notes and some citations from some text. And so here is an example from Brian D. Joseph and Richard D. Jonda's edited text called A Handbook of Historical Linguistics. And Professor Lyle Campbell has an article in there, How to Show Languages Are Related, Methods for Distant Genetic Relationship. And I include this citation here because in our conversation on Facebook, there was this notion that the forms in essence should look similar in the related African languages to the form Setep as we understand it in ancient Egyptian. And what I want to re-emphasize is that when we're talking about genetic relationships, very rarely, unless they're really, really close languages, are they're going to be exactly alike or even look alike, because so much time has uh, been between the proto language and the modern languages, or the even though they're dead now in terms of the languages, the attested written languages. So many sound changes in things have evolved. So we always got to be careful when words look like the word that we are looking for cognates for in ancient Egyptian with a modern African language. So this citation here kind of reminds us to be careful in that area and to always and only rely on regular sound meaning correspondences, and not just because something looks alike. So this is here to remind y'all, and I go through the process, for example, to show how the word five in English develops from the word quequo, or queque, excuse me. Well, ultimately, quequo or queque but this is in Indo-European is pinque for five, and I go through the process to show you how that process evolved. And so how pinque becomes five demonstrates how words can be related but not look the same as the proto form, or just like the word. So the word five and cinc in French, or like cinco in Spanish, are the exact same word. But how does five and cinco relate, even though they don't look or sound alike? So that's what this section here is dedicated on them doing. And this right below it is just a citation reminding us that words can fossilize grammatical morphemes, and a deep analysis of related languages will reveal to us what is a root and what is a grammatical morpheme. And this is important because this again was brought up in the discussion on Facebook. And I'm informing the readers that the essence setep is a prefix that may or may not have been fossilized, and so we'll deal with that in a moment. So this was actually discussed in the first video, so I'm not going to re-show this, but I just want to remind you of that there. And this citation here is from Raimo Antilla, if I'm saying that correctly, from his text, Historical and Comparative Linguistics, 1989, which was republished in 2009. And it goes through the reconstruction process. But what I really wanted to focus on was this first step here, where it says sets of basic vocabulary items with rather strict meaning requirements. And I'm having this tension also in the Facebook group, because there are oftentimes people are comparing words with these wide semantic ranges. And when it's a slippery slope when you do that, because you can make anything seem to be related to each other when you are willing to cast a wide net. And so that's why the comparative method requires that when you are doing your comparisons, that the matches from both languages need to be very, very narrow and closely related in concept as well as form. So as we say, cognates stand on two legs, on both form and meaning. And so this is exactly what we hear. So here's one source at least giving you that criteria. So when I'm looking at other people's proposals, and you have a word that is supposed to mean bird, but then you compare it with a word that means foot, right? Or another one that means to lay eggs or something like this. Not saying it's wrong, but we have to be more careful, and we should really just match birds that generally mean bird in each language, and then we can discuss potential expanded cognates, more distantly related cognates, right? So we'll skip down there. So now what I want to discuss here is that in our conversation, I kept reiterating that there is rarely, if ever, any triconsonantal words in the ancient Egyptian, or triradical words in the ancient Egyptian language. The vast majority of the words are either monosyllabic, meaning consonant vowel, or even monosyllabic in the context of consonant vowel consonant, or they are biradical, meaning consonant vowel, or monosyllabic, as we said, consonant vowel consonant. So two consonants in sequence in terms of the root. And any third or fourth consonant that is attached to a word in the ancient Egyptian language is indeed a grammatical morpheme. And so the ancient Egyptian language was already old by the time that the writing script, the hieroglyphs, were created. So there are evolutions and interactions and sound changes that have happened, fossilizations, the creation of new morphemes, and the like that already happened prior to the very first dynasty of the pharaonic period. And so this first table here is a good example of that. So, for example, we have, and I try to highlight and bold in red the roots, and then everything else are grammatical morphemes. So we have this word, for example, inketu or inketawa, captives, hostage. The W is a suffix, the plural suffix, and the T is the suffix of the abstract, right? And so we can see when those two grammatical morphemes are dropped, and this grapheme here, so uh, it's debated on what the actual sound is for this symbol here, but the symbol that they are using to represent whatever this sound may have been during whatever time period is what we call a voice pharyngeal fricative, right? So you'll hear me say that throughout this conversation, but that does not mean that it was a voice pharyngeal fricative. This is just the symbol for that that we use in a transliteration of the ancient Egyptian language. So most people know this as Ankh, but it's probably more like, Haneku, uh, Hineku, Hineki, something like that, right? Hanaka. Uh, so meaning captive. So you have this Nki, meaning a snake, and then you have, Ankh, meaning a snake. And then you have a partial reduplication here, Nekek, meaning a star, and then you have Ankwa, the W here meaning the plural again. So you have stars. So you can see even throughout here that there's this constant, this two consonant root, and then there's these other grammatical morphemes that are added to the beginning and the ends of the words. And the way that you can tell what is a root versus what is the grammatical morpheme is when you're looking at variations of the word and you see that a consonant or two consonants in the ancient Egyptian language is steady, but all of the other consonants change with each word. That is a key indicator that we are dealing with a particular root that has particular grammatical morphemes. And whether they were fossilized or active at the time is irrelevant. What this is evidence of is what we're going to go back to in this when we're talking about morphological composition. So we can tell that at the beginning of this word, it was morphologically composite in origin. So that's what we're talking about here. That for example, this word unk is morphologically composite. We can see different morphemes, suffix and prefix to these different roots. So when we talk about neb, preserve, senebet, recovery, senebri, protect, preserve, escape. This is a partial reduplication. And the ancient Egyptian language has some very interesting reduplication forms, and you'll see a number of them throughout this discourse, right? So let's continue. So again, I won't go through everything. You have the document, so download the document, and you'll be able to pause this video and kind of slow it down and go at your own pace. So we see in this third table here, table 3. What was the first table? That's I didn't know. Oh yeah, that was the first table. Okay. Did I label these wrong? Let me continue. All right. So we're going to take another example here. So we have Neb, with the nasalized uvulatrial suffix, meaning to tie, to wind up, to unwind. And then we have suneb, meaning cord and twine. So we see here that we have a root neb and then with a prefix s here. So from a verb, it is nominalized. It's an S nominalization morpheme right here, right? Then we have nebu, creator or builder. So there's a word neb or nebi, meaning to create. And this W is not the plural W, but the W, the first person singular masculine agent prefix, right? And so, and this nebi is from the same root, but instead of the agent suffix, they use the so-called nisbi suffix, which is essentially has the same function, right? And so then we have suneb, meaning to build, right? So now this S is not a nominal prefix, it is a verbal prefix. So remember, we don't know what the vowels were in the ancient Egyptian languages throughout the initial stages. So this S, the nominal prefix, and this S, the verbal prefix, are homographs, right? And so we have nebwa, nabawa, we should say a wooden device, and then sineb wai, a part of a boat. And remember, boat, they didn't have steel boats back then, so these were wooden components of the boat, right? Then we have nebwa, a plant, and then sineb, a plant, and we can go on and on, and you'll see these various prefixes. And I've separated uh, the suffixes by and prefixes by a dot. So I've highlighted the roots and bolded them in red throughout this text. And the grammatical morphemes are either prefix or suffix to the root, and I have them separated out by the W. So, again, years and years of analyzing ancient Egyptian texts allows for me to do this consistently, right? And so the next table deals with the revelation that there's at least two different languages or two different dialects existing in ancient Egyptian. And in dialect 1 or dialect A, they tend to suffix the T for the nominalization of a word, right? So we have this newt, meaning thread, yarn. And then in dialect B, they prefix it with S, seneb, cord, twine, right? And what you'll find out throughout this text, and in any of my earlier texts, is that W interchanges with B, M, P, and F. All in all periods throughout, they interchange and they internally correspond when we're doing an internal analysis, uh, right? So so we see that this root is NW dot T. The syllables are reversed to WN dot T and still has the same meaning, kind of rope or cord, right? Then we have Nawit, oval, as a container, and it really should just be in a container, but I'm writing it down exactly how it is written in the dictionaries. And then we have Seneb, bottle, flask, Nawat, a kind of cloth, Seneb, woven product, fabric, fabrication, thread, etc. Right? Newt, sky, heaven, Senebit, sky, heaven. And we can see that there was influence in the original form, nebit and newit, meaning sky, heaven, but dialect B still has to prefix it with S. So these are the same grammatical morphemes, but from two different languages. And there was a convergence process in the Nile Valley where whatever the dominant language was, there was interference with this other language, and we see the words present in the writing script. So these are the same words, different dialects, different languages over time existing there. So this tells us that T and S are variants of each other, and we'll see that later on and why that's important, right? So I'm dealing with interchanges and correspondences. So I'm showing you here in this that this h, this h with the this oops, excuse me, this h with the loop under it corresponds, for example, in the second position with the B, the voice bilabial plosive, b, b. So we have nick, nick, meaning massacre, butcher. And then we have haneb, meaning slaughter. This has a dotted H prefix. Then we have nech, to protect, to help. And then neb, neb, to protect. Nechi, meaning snake. And then we have nabid, to coil, and nabidet, a dice snake. And so words for snake often derive from a number of sources, one meaning to go, to slither on the ground, and then the other one meaning to coil, right? And then nechenet, a bird, and then ineb, a bird, right? And then this nechenet is a partial reduplication where the second ch has been dropped. And, for comparison, I note here this word nech, meaning to be young, to be small. It has a variant in the language, nechen, to be a child, to be become a young child, right? And so it's a partial reduplication that is the second h has been dropped, just like how you see this neck massacre butcher. This is the full reduplication, so this is a partial reduplication that we see here. But that same ch also corresponds with m as in Mary. So this is the voice bilabial nasal mer, and we can see the R corresponds to the nasalized uvulatrial, which is a type of R in the ancient Egyptian language. So we have mer, a sick man, illness, pain, cheret, a disease, illness, mer, a canal, charet, a body of water, mer, a pasture, ker, a field, also a measure of an area, etc., etc., etc. Right? And you can see that it is regular and corresponding. So you need to have these in mind when you are doing comparisons in ancient Egyptian. So not only for the internal correspondences, but for the external correspondences, because a word that you are comparing in another African language, let's just say we had this word, uh, some word in Chiluba that corresponds to mir, a sick man, and illness, right? But let's just say that this word disappeared from the ancient Egyptian language and all we had was this one. By regular sound meaning correspondences with the other words, we know that there was at one time an inherited word, mer, a sick man, but that we can use this form of the word instead to do our correspondence with, because we've already done the work here. We've already established the sound laws, right? With these comparisons. So, just keep that in mind as well. Some more interchanges. And so remember that voiced pharyngeal fricative sign that we talked about. This interchanges with duh, also s and z, the sibilants in the ancient Egyptian language. So here's a few examples. The habit, deb, meaning horn, habib, habib, or however you want to pronounce it, to knock on the door, the dib dib, to knock the heart, rahib, oppression, and dib, to injure, khabish, and zibish, to drown, karich, versus charis, to vomit. So you can see where the bolded and red is the interchanges and or internal correspondences. So this is going to become important when you're doing the comparative work as well. And so again, just to show just how we showed that S and the T correspond uh, before, now we're showing that the initial S corresponds to the sign of the voice pharyngeal fricative. So remember that we already established that unk and neb correspond with each other, right? So we did that right here. So now we're showing that the third consonant is in fact a prefix on these roots here, and that because we just saw that the S and Z interchange as well as D. And so while we only showed, one or two examples of this form of these interchanges here, these complete the series to show that, in fact, that when you say unk life or unk to live, to be alive, it is the dialectical or language variation of the word seneb, air, breath, and seneb, to be alive, right? And then we have anchet, meaning fire. This T is a nominal suffix T, right, for the abstract. And then we have seneb, to burn, in the verbal form. So this S is a verbal prefix, right? So we know that this is a verb, right? And we go on and on and on. And so here's just some correspondences with Neb, with Chiluba, and that Neb also corresponds to the J. The N corresponds to the J. And remember that we already established that B and W interchange in a language and correspond. So you'll see that in this section, so you can view that. So here's part of the discourse that was central, because I argued that the Egyptian language is built off of consonant vowel monosyllabic roots. And in the first video, I showed some examples of that. And then I also gave the h, because the h and the j uh, internally correspond, which would make sense because we've already established that the h and the in or the labials interchange, but also that the in and the j interchanges here. But we also show in these variations that h also interchanges with j and or dialectical variants. So again, in the first video, and there was a second slide after the initial one, which I set up the correspondences that was kind of small there, so they're represented here in detail that you can go there as well. So now we're getting into the meat of everything, and I won't be able to go through everything, but this is, I'm just showing you the process. So in the word setep, meaning to choose, I argue that the root is tep, and we'll see why that is in a little bit. So my base comparisons with the Egyptian is going to be Chiluba and Sumerian, and Chiluba and Kikongo for the duration of this video. And so there may be a table with collagen in it, if I don't recall, but we'll get to that later, right? So what I wanted to show here is that the so we conduct tests in the same way that scientists conduct tests in terms of hypothesis testing. So what I want to do first is establish the consonant sequence TP in and what shows up in Chiluba and Sumerian, right? So we have Tep meaning head, and we have Chishiku meaning head in Chiluba. And in Sumerian, we have Sang, and then the second consonant is lost in this variation. So it's just Sa, right? Meaning head, point, leader, present, gift. Same meanings that you find over here. But notice in this first column here with Egyptian, you have Tep, and then you also have Teb, right? Also meaning head, top, but it has the additional meaning of skull and forehead, right? So I include words that appear there. So notice that this word tep, meaning top and head, also stands for the word for beginning. And you'll see that there's a closer form to tep in Chiluba, tapa, meaning to hatch, to appear, to burst forth, to develop, tapila, to begin, to get started, etc., etc. But we see that it's this sh and then s, g, that starts off the conversation. So when we go to tepi, meaning foremost, we have kuimpala before previously, and pala face, figure, front, forehead. So remember that this is tep. And so these variations here are the inverse. So instead of tep, it's pet, right? But notice in Sumeria, it keeps the same, it's the same force. So sangha. So when you see the G with that rising and low mark or falling mark on top of it, it has the ng sound, as in sing or song, or to bring me something, right? And so we have Tepi, Tep, high priest, Mulopo, chief, Lord, God. Again, Sang, king, Sangha, priest. And so this Mulopo, so we're showing, I'm showing here that Tep in Chiluba has the T, ng, T, K consonant sequences, S, K, sh, K, and then we're going to see later on S, ng as well. That like what we see in Sumerian. So remember that Sumerian died off a long time ago. So its evolution has been frozen in time, whereas Chiluba has continued to evolve. So there are different pronunciations for these words here, right? So, um, and as we showed earlier, there's a correspondence that is S and T. So instead of saying tep, we look at sep, and sepet, border, shore, bank, jiloba, place where you cross a river or ford, which is the riverbank. And then we have pesh, which is the syllabic inverse of, and we'll see these syllabic inverses throughout here, right? So we have tep, the best of, tepi, finest, best, mushinga, price, value, worth, trade, reward, sag, to be high quality, to be rare, precious, right? Bulobo, value, Nima, Kunima, Kulima, expensive, costly, dear. And then we have Pesh, you know, precious, valuable, rare. Tepi, small fish. Musangi, small sardine fish. Musongo, tiger fish. Kikongo, insongi, a snipe fish. And then we have Pesh, again, the syllabic inverse should be Shep. That will be corresponding to Tep in ancient Egyptian. And so we have Tapa, to be brave, which is bulobo, heroism, impetuosity, ardor, bravery, valor, and then we have mess. So the P becomes M and becomes S, hero, to be manly, a young man. And then we're kind of back into the gist of things here. Tep, chest box, beam of wood, large timber, etc. In Sangha, oak, Lusanga, African oak, and Sanga Labunga, Labungu, notched oak, etc., etc., which becomes Gish, gesh, tree, wood, wooden implement, tool, plow, natural phenomenon, which is the inverse. So we see how, uh, because there's an interchange, remember there's an interchange in Sumerian between und and im. And so that when you go back to the beginning, go look for those interchanges and you'll see these, right? Teb, dagger, teb to stab at, to spear, songa to carve wood, to sharpen, cutting, songa cutting into a point, sharpen, um, giri, meri, razor, sword, dagger. And then we're back to the tip, top of a mountain, musongo, roof, peak, ridge, song, head, and top, meaning the same things. So tippet, white crown of a berkimet, and then chisongu, crown, ridge, summit, pinion. Right? So what is the white crown tipiet is chisongu in Chiluba, right? And we can go down the line and you will see that there are regular sound meaning correspondences. So we even do with the same thing with the in Egyptian TM, and then in Sumerian you'll see is P dash esh or sh, right? Which here's the collagen column that I was speaking of earlier. And you can see the variations, the consistency here in collagen. So we're just setting up all the sound meaning correspondences in the language, right? So, um, so, so we've already established that when there is a TP or SP, or even and we'll see later with a TM, that in Chiluba and Sumerian, Chiluba has more correspondences because it is also TP as well as LP. And remember, Proto-Bantu D became L. But you'll see that where it's TP, it is S ung and SG, S ung, SB, SM in Sumerian. And so the test here is that if S is a prefix in these roots here in Egyptian, then the roots in Chiluba and Sumerian are only going to correspond to the TP, which we've already established what it should look like in these first tables here. And we'll see consistently that it is song, sung, tek, sig, sag, sanga, etc. in Sungi, all by consonant, by radical roots. So, like for example, this satep, do carpentry, to work with carpentry tools. Satep, to debone, processes pieces of meat, to cut up a slaughtered animal, to kill or destroy, to work with an axe, right? Becomes in Chiluba, musaka, woodwork, framing, roofing, saka, cut out, to sharpen, sakisha, to sharpen, right? But check out musongi, wood carver, in Kikongo, singe, to cut, songola, to cut, sharpen, make a point, songoka, to be pointed, to be sharp, which in Sumerian is sanga, sang, sing, to cut, break, to harvest, right? So it is consistent. You will see all throughout this table, it is consistent. The same consonant sequences for the Setep root. So when I say, for example, that Setep, meaning to select, to choose, choice, select, pick, choices, is cognate with Chiluba Sunga, to choose, Sungula, to choose, select, opt for, prefer, elect, Sungisha, the causative. Then in Sumerian Zag, Sag, Zang, Sang, to choose, chosen, it is not arbitrary. as Mboli was trying to imply in the group. It is based off of regular sound meaning correspondences. And I conducted two tests in here because not only did I do sutep, I did hatep. So when you see hatepu, peace, contentment, for example, it corresponds to chiluba sunga, to separate, to appease, reconcile, pacify. Musungi, peacemaker, reconciler, one saved from death. Also tunga, to be content, happy, joyful. Um, Sanka, to be content, to rejoice, to have joy. And again, consistently in Sumerian, Sag, Shag, Sig, Sa, Sha. To be, make good, to please, to satisfy, to be friendly, good fortune, favor, grace, sweet, good, pleasant, beautiful, fruitful, right? All of this is in the same semantic field, right? Itep, to be useful, equipped. In Songu, beautiful, everything that is oriented towards good, authentic, beautiful, well done, good, and suitable. When you're talking about something that's useful and suitable, these are the same, provided with, correct, reliable. Also a variant in the same language, linga, beautiful, lingele, to be useful, helpful, advantageous, right? And so you have hatep, meaning to slaughter, harmful action, tep, blood, sunga, to strangle with hands, jisunga, to hang oneself, and then the other sunga variants that you saw up there, meaning to cut, to slice, etc. And then we have in Sumerian shag, meaning to slaughter. Hetep, damage, defect. Musangu, a person born with a deformity. Sig, sag, si, se, to stroke, blow, a stroke or a blow in the verb form, to chop down trees, to strike, to hurt, to damage, to beat, to flatten, to remove, become settled, etc., etc. Right? Everything is consistent. Atep as a greeting, welcome, sekelele, sekelela, to give a salutation and respects or greeting, to a chief, incantations, and then you have this variant here, and I'm still kind of trying to figure this out, but I have it here and I'll come back and update later. Hatep, basket, chisuka, long basket for carrying on the head. Susu, a basket, is a partial reduplication. And just like how you see these forms here where the second consonant has been dropped, this happened here with susu, basket, right? And then I do the same consonant sequence comparisons, SG and SNG, and Sumerian with Kikongo, and we see these correspondences here. And I do the same thing for SP because S and T correspond and interchange in ancient Egyptian. So we have to do a SP correspondence as well. And we see that in Chiluba, we have the same consonant sequence. S, ng, to bind together, sepi, to bind together. Sangha, to assemble, collect, put together, gather together, mingle, mix together, intermingle, combine. In Sangha, a person who joins or brings together anything. In the Kikongo, Kanga is bind and tie. The K has not been palatalized, right? But sep, cure, dose, medicine, success. Sangaja, to cure. Sangala, to recover from, to regain health, to be happy. Sung in Kikongo, take care, attend. Zing, to live. So this is technically this is all of these are like, all of this is cognate with the word unk. And I'll have to do a different video for that. So, you can see the rest of the correspondences here. You will see that it is consistent in terms of SP instead of TP, the same consonant correspondences. And that S in ancient Egyptian also corresponds with sh, and they interchange. You'll see the same consonant sequences over here in Egyptian. And I make sure that I do long tables so that you can see the whole variety of forms and things, right? So if you have any questions, make sure that you let me know in the comments. concerning any one of the tables. So make sure that you note what table number it is and what row the word is in, or the correspondences are in. So we see these correspondence. So the point of this table 14 is just to show that sep, that the biconsonant um, root has a form with a s prefix. So you have to show, in order to demonstrate that the tri-radical or tri-consonant roots in Egyptian derives from biconsonantal roots, you have to be able to show in the Egyptian language the biconsonantal root as well as the extended form with the third consonant, either prefix or suffix, to the root. And that's what table 14 does for you here with the SP and other variants, because P also interchanges with F, and show that. So these are allophones in certain contexts, right? So, more deeply, when we look into this more deeply, it will tell us about the vowels that were involved in this process. So you have this phenomenon in linguistics called splits, right? And splits happen after merger. So, we'll be able to look more closely in terms of determining whether these were primary splits or secondary splits. And so we'll have to save that conversation for another time. So again, y'all have the document, so y'all be able to uh, look at this, more closely yourselves. And I'll also do the SP and show that SP also corresponds to TP in Chiluba, right? So we have a TEP and SEP, or what is SEP becomes Sung in Chiluba, but also TEP and SEP becomes TEP in Chiluba, as we can see here. For example, the SEP, misdeed, fault, character. SEPEP, which is a partial reduplication, shortcoming, becomes in Chiluba tupa, to make a mistake, to make a fault, to be mistaken. Chitupadila, error, right? And then we have these other dialectical variants in the language, these doublets, right? Sep, a drink. Sefet, a drink, drink container. Topa, rain, to be wet, soaked by rain, right? So you have the noun and then the verb form. So it's just water, right? Sep, dose, portion of food, remnant of food, residue portion. Chitupa, part, in, piece, part, decimal, math, chapter. Achitupa, small in size, short and brief. Butupa, brevity, smallness of size and volume. Katupa, small piece. And then it's a syllabic inverse. So this word here, sep, has an inverse form in Egyptian. Pesh. So we know that there's a front vowel either before or after the sh, right? So it should be pesh, which is confirmed in Chiluba, lupuesa, right? Peace, of fabric, earth, etc., right? Satep, to choose. Tapulula, arranged separately, divided into different categories, sort, classify, right? Satep, pick out, choose, choice, outstanding, noble, elite. And tapu, special, extraordinary, determining, decisive, right? So this word satep, meaning noble, the elite, clever, exquisite mind, etc. It has a dialect form, shapesi, shapes, partial reduplication, noble, august, splendid, of buildings, valuable, right? Tep, dagger. Satep, cut up, an animal, butcher. Satep, to choke. Chiluba, tinga, squeeze. In tapu, tattoo instrument, scissors, burring, anything kind of sharp in that instance, right? You have kutapa, murder, beat, and beaten instrument, sacrifice, to pierce, kutapila. But notice this word ntapila, which I argue is the uh, comes from the same root that gives us Semitic kitab, meaning writing or book. And that this is how we know that this is a borrowing into Semitic, because you can't break down the word kitab into its component parts, although it's component in origin. It's morphologically component in origin. And so we have in the Sumerian language, the just like what we have in Bantu and Egyptian, a biconsonantal root. For example, you find instead of kitab, it's just simply dub, meaning tablet. Nam dub, meaning writing. Right? So we'll continue. What's wrong with my mouse? Let me do that. Let's use this. What is going on with my mouse? We will get this together. Here we go. And let's slide it down. So let me just use the laptops. If it'll let me grip. What's going on here? Back. All right. So we did that already. And these are just more examples. So this last, let me go back. Okay, yeah. So this last table here is just to demonstrate and show that that there's a relationship between t, s, and sh in Egyptian, and between p, b, and f in Egyptian. And this table, and I'm still working on completing it for some other work, but you have enough here for me to make the point, and you'll see that these are just variations of the same words in each row, right? And so you get to see like you know, this word satep, meaning to choose, to pick, has another form, khepep, meaning to rob, which is a partial duplication. Also sepi, meaning to take, to seize. Shesep, seize, hold, grasp. Sapa, to attain. Seper, to bring. Shesep, to assume the crown, to catch fish, to purchase, to wear clothes. And you have shefed, to grasp. Shefahi, to seize upon. Shefin, to touch with the hand. Right? Like these are all the same words, but there must have been some either lost grammatical morphemes, or there was umlaut, or the changing of the vowels that had grammatical significance, that motivated and created the environments for these different sound changes, right? So again, you have the text. You'll be able to see these things for yourself, and you will, if you look closely, you will see that I am right when it comes to this here. And again, if you have any questions, you want to go further, then hit me up and probably we'll do a live and kind of go over this with your questions. But I don't want to go too deep into this because again, this is something that you just kind of have to slow down and look at. But what I concluded is that satep derives from a word tep or sep that means to grab, to seize, to hold. And for semantic, let me go back. So for semantic correspondences or reference, take for example this Egyptian word charawu, meaning to take up, to seize, to snatch, to don a garment, to rob, to steal. Then when the W is replaced by E, chari, it means to select, to sort out, to pick out. It's the same word here. And then when the nasalized uvular trill becomes fully nasalized and it's just chinny, it becomes to distinguish, to be distinguished. Sichini, to be distinguished, to distinguish oneself, to refrain from. Right? Now, what does distinguish have to do with being to select and to take up, to hold, to rob, to steal? That's why I put it here in brackets for semantics. Ganesh, to choose, and it also means to distinguish. So when you're choosing something, you're separating, you're making a selection, you're dividing, uh, you're weighing, options and the like, right? You're voting, you're putting something in a hierarchy. So if you choose this, you're choosing this for a reason. But in order to choose something, you have to separate the others. You have to distinguish it from the other. So these words are with the words distinguish and to choose are within the same semantic field, right? And I show in Sumerian two forms here: dab, meaning to seize, to take hold, to bind, also meaning to choose, and then zag, sag, zang, sang, to choose, chosen. So we know this is both of these are actually direct cognates. But I didn't spend too much time on the dab correspondences, but we can do that at a later time. So we see in Egyptian, chikan, sipi, to take, to seize, shesep, seize, hold, grasp, sepeh, to attain, seper, to bring. This is the original root, but the I guess there was some kind of dissimilation. So you have setep instead of sisep, right? And so you have the inverse of the root is bet, to pluck, to pick, the syllabic inverse. Then you have satep, to pick out, to choose. And then you have another variant, to beg, not to beg like in English, but to beg, um, meaning to pick, to pluck, right? And this G being a suffix here. And then you have all these other forms here. And then what I argue is that they ultimately come from a word kep, meaning hand, which survive in ancient Egyptian as hep, right? And then you have this form here, kep, meaning severed hand. And it's from this notion of hep that that the dotted H, corresponded to T and S. And we demonstrate that in the 2023 text is well, right? So I show kef. So you have this. So we're talking about a root kep, and remember that the P also interchanges and corresponds with F in the language. So we do another test with kef, and it corresponds to tek, tuk, teak, salk, cheek, what you would expect in Chiluba. And so you have these forms here, right? And so this is really kind of an exercise in the comparative method and then showing you how these words are formed and how the syllables switching, puts the phonemes in particular new environments, which either regressively or progressively uh, motivates an assimilation, change in the sounds there, right? So you can look at these a little later and read them yourself, right? So I want y'all. So this is y'all homework. And so on this page here, what page is this? Page 26. I demonstrate that satep, the word for ats, this is the symbol here, and in the verbal form to work with an ats is the same word as noet, ats, except in this language or dialect, remember that the what is T in that language is S prefixed in the other language. So this helps to prove as well that tep is the root, right? So because tep dagger becomes setep ats, and ats is a wood carving tool, right? And you should deal with you should know the sound meaning correspondences which we established at the beginning, right? So y'all be able to read that, and then there's just some additional notes for some other arguments and commentary that were mentioned in the uh, original conversation that is not relevant for the outside conversation that we're having here. But for those of you who are in the group who are reading, I very much advise that you read this here. But one of the reasons also, besides what I cite here that is relevant to the group argumentation, is the establishment of nu and neb with not only Sumerian nam, them, dab, etc., but zag, sang, sug, sheg. So we've already established that zag, sang, sug, sheg in these variants are uh, cognates with Egyptian tep and sep. And so, the mathematical concept of if A equals B and B equals C, area therefore equals C. This is what's happening here. So this is how we can go back and demonstrate and prove that satep ats is cognate with newt ats, that these are different variations of the same word. So you have to go a roundabout way, but that's why you establish the sound laws, right? And this is how we know she, sheg to take away to seize, dab to seize to take the hold to choose, etc., is the same word, and why nim to seize and rem Caesar in Egyptian are also cognate with the tep and sep in the ancient Egyptian languages. So there's a whole bunch of sound changes, and we have to do some deeper work to figure out what is the pull and push chains that cause these different changes to happen in throughout these different time periods. And that is some painstaking work. So we won't deal with all of that here. And you know, uh, Mboli's dealing with these tri-radical roots, these kikuki roots, and he's trying to make everything kikuki. And but I'm posting here some commentary from some other scholars that believe that there were these tri-radical roots in these African languages, mainly Niger Congo. So from GJK Camel Dunn as well as Roger Blinch, and y'all can read that on your own as well. And I covered this in the conversation in the first video. And lastly, starting on page 32, going all the way to 38, it's just commentary from the book 101 Problems and Solutions in Historical Linguistics, a workbook. Just some commentary on common sound changes. So for those of you who are new to linguistic conversations and you want to know, like, what are some common sound changes and how they may pertain to the conversation that we're having now, and what you see above in the charts, then this here is notes for you, right? So I encourage you to get the book if you're learning how to do linguistics, but that's more, even that book is still kind of advanced. You need to learn basic linguistics first and then come to the historical comparative linguistics. So that's the text in a nutshell. And so again, you have the link in your in the description to download and to follow the conversation itself. So maybe in an open, if y'all have any questions regarding this, y'all will let me know what your argumentation is. So with that being said, I'm going to exit out of there and come back to this page and stop the sharing. And I am going to end this conversation for right now. So thank you for your time. Make sure that you like and share the video, and I will see you all next time. Peace.
This program was created with the love and support of all our Patreon members and subscribers. If you are not a member yet and would like to see more content like this, consider becoming a member today. The link is in the description of this video. Your support is greatly appreciated.